So in this segment, we're going to be discussing hundreds of investment zone bids axed as Sunak dismantles Truss policy. So the investment zones were basically like a free port without a port. So hundreds of bids by councils to be granted tax exemptions and liberalised planning rules under the investment zone schemes have been killed off as Sunak's government dismantles another one of Liz Truss's projects. Sources said ministers were trying to scale down the scheme, which was a part of the previous government's growth scheme. So like I said, these are basically free ports without the ports. The government, when asked about why these free ports would be different to the ones we could have had once we were members of the EU, said they would be different but never really elaborated, so that's pretty ominous. Areas of the UK that would be governed essentially by private interests with minimal rule of law. They have their own laws, their own courts. There would be trade borders for anything coming out of these areas, and they're not included in trade deals. Fewer than 20 zones, which will probably be focused instead on universities, are now envisioned following alleged disagreements between the Treasury and the Department for Levelling Up. A planned announcement last week, a replacement scheme was called off at the last minute, so clearly the Treasury aren't happy about these schemes funded, the Treasury run by Jeremy Hunt. It looks like the government will focus on universities and probably R&D related business things that require experimentation that would potentially breach the laws we have now. Stuff which would require extremely low safety standards, which sounds pretty scary to be honest. I mean, it's one way to drag some foreign direct investment into the country, but there are, to my knowledge, no other developed economies that allow this. Despite hundreds of councils and combined mayoral authorities submitting bids to be considered for zones in their patch, Levelling Up Minister Rowley admitted the previous expression of interest process will not be taken forward, essentially means it's scrapped. I'm surprised so many councils are applying to get these zones. Am I missing something, or do they not know how these zones will work? Maybe they're just desperate for cash, but what happens when these areas add to local pollution? Something we've seen with one of the free ports in the north of England, the construction of it leading to the death of a lot of the marine life there. How hard will these councils protest when waste products get dumped in the waterways and in other resources people need? They struggle to take these areas to court because these areas wouldn't be doing anything wrong depending on the rules of the investment zone. Ministers still want to salvage elements of the investment zone scheme. Sources said given the amount of time councils put into their applications and the extensive information they provided about specific wants and needs, councils have just wasted tons of taxpayer money to bid for zones that were scrapped within months due to a change of leadership. So congrats to these councils, well done. Hopefully my local council wasn't involved. Discussions have been held between the Treasury and the Department for Levelling Up for several months about rebadging the schemes as research and development zones, innovation zones and academic zones. Various sectors have been considered as potential targets, including key industrial sites, but the most likely to benefit are universities. I guess they're desperate since academics are leaving the UK because we're not in the Horizon programme anymore. But if we do get some experimental work done in the UK, by using these methods, we'd struggle to really benefit from it. Look at electric vehicles, for example. If the UK by some miracle became a leader in driverless cars, we would struggle to make the cars here. The British Volt company, which was meant to make a lot of the electric batteries for the cars, for the UK has gone into administration. Given the rules of origins rules that are within trade deals, the UK would struggle to actually make anything with the R&D. The manufacturing would go to North America, China or the EU, or a bit to all of them. We may not benefit at all from these endeavours. And that's just rules of origins. You'll remember raw materials amongst other things, and staff as well as expertise. Labour claimed the debacle had been a, quote, complete shambles that exposes the weakness of the Prime Minister, end quote. Nandi, the Levelling Up Secretary, said investment zones were the Conservatives' big idea, then they were scrapped, then back on, and now they're seemingly off again. It's shocking that so much money and time had been wasted on the applications because of Tory chaos. Nandi criticised the sticking plaster policies and pledged Labour would deliver a proper strategy for growth, blah 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 blah, end quote. She pointed to the party's devolution plans, claiming they would deliver the biggest ever transfer out of Westminster and investment in green jobs. Surely the creation of Storm on the Scottish Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly would have been the biggest amount of devolution out of Westminster. Like that can't be the case, can it? Some vague stuff there from Nandi, but I wish she would have attacked the idea of free ports and investment zones generally because they're bad ideas. Free ports are sometimes linked to crimes, as you can look at stolen goods like art before you purchase it. among other crimes. So, because it's not a crime to, I think, import stolen art there, or at least it's difficult to punish them. The UK had more free ports, but that blasted communist. So the UK had more free ports in the past, but that blasted communist David Cameron, leader of the Conservative Party, closed them down, and now we have the current Conservative Party reopening them and then closing them down. So, yeah, not very sure on what's going on at the moment, but yeah, these free ports and investment zones are a ridiculous idea, genuinely terrible. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.